Wow, incredible news is coming out of Europe, specifically with unions declaring that they will no longer be a part of a big war effort, and it looks like they're actually effective in their protest. Of course, we are talking about the larger proxy war that is happening in Yemen, where the European Union, the United States, and Saudi Arabia are attacking that country, creating the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. And this story is incredible because it shows you how a lot of people always feel overwhelmed, always feel horrible, always decry that there's wars and there's nothing we could do about it. Well, this story shows you that you actually can, since there's many gears of wars, and all it takes is one of those gears not working for the war to stop. We're going to get into that plus a lot more with this incredible story, but before we do, just wanted to remind everyone that our friend Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante, has a new crypto newsletter. So if you're interested in cryptos and bitcoins, and I would just call it kind of alternative financial lifestyle, I don't know what else to call it. His name's the Dollar Vigilante. I mean, what do you expect? If you're interested in, quote, alternative financial lifestyles, check out his new newsletter. The link will be in the description below. And of course, Jeff has been a big part of this independent media organization. We've been friends. We've been working for a very long time. So definitely go check that out. But Jason, let's just get to the story right away, because this story is absolutely incredible. And again, it just shows you the pure amount of change that individuals can make if they come together and if they understand what is happening. I think this is why we're going to get into also the latest updates in the Yemen war in this video. And I think this is why there's so much secrecy around the war in Yemen, and so much disinformation, and so much also lack of coverage, so people don't protest like we're seeing the protest in Italy, where local unions have joined activists and tried to refuse a cargo ship, a Saudi Arabian cargo ship coming from Europe with weapons. These local unions even tried this cargo ship from stopping it from docking in Italy, but they have protested and are refusing to supply it in a larger protest against the war in Yemen, against the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. The dock workers have pretty much gone on strike. They're refusing to work. And they're refusing to service this ship, which they tried to stop from docking in the first place. And they're, of course, these unions and dock workers are joining human rights campaigners who are opposing the stocking of this ship with more weapons, because they fear that these weapons are going to be used against civilian populations, which predominantly they are in Yemen. That's why we have the largest humanitarian crisis in Yemen. Of course, there was also a demonstration where protesters held signs opposing the war, opposing armed trafficking that's happening from Europe to Saudi Arabia. And it's important to understand that this same ship was loaded up in Belgium, but it was also blocked in France. And France had similar protests occur in that city. And this is a movement that's happening all over Europe with, of course, very little coverage from the mainstream media. And this also is going along Italy's government. Jason, this is huge news, and shows us how, man, the gears of war, they're extremely susceptible towards just one of that small group of people deciding, hey, we don't want to have blood on our hands. And it looks like they're actually very effective at it, Jason.
Yeah, what can I say but mambo Italiano. Couldn't be more proud of my people, folks. Such a great moment to stand up. Here in the United States, most people don't even realize that Yemen is being bombed into, a lot of people say the Stone Ages, but it's worse than that, bombed into starvation. That humanitarian crisis is only because of the war effort. And I want to point out that they didn't even want this ship to dock. They weren't actually going to load up weapons at this location. This is where the quote-unquote humanitarian aid was supposed to be loaded on. As you stated before, Belgium did load it with arms. France refused. They tried their best not to even allow this to dock at port. But when it got there, at least it was met with protests, banners, intelligent people that know what's going on, and refused to be a weapon of war, knowing that aid would be weaponized against the people.
I didn't even know you were Italian, Jason. That's news to me as well. But by the way, this is also backed up by Italy's, quote, five-star movement, which is a part of the government's ruling populist kind of leaning coalition, who has also fought in Italy to end the government's arms deals with the Saudi kingdom for years. But in France, this is important, in France, the government there is threatening to put journalists in jail because they actually exposed how the French government was arming this conflict in Yemen, and they are facing 5 years in jail and could be fined $83,000 for simply doing journalism, for having documents that whistleblowers gave them and reporting to the public what the government was doing in secret, and the government didn't want the population to know. Because as you know, we've been covering a lot of conflicts inside of Paris, inside of France, and there's a lot of grievances in that country. And this just adds to another one, but shows you, Jason, this is another layer that I kind of wanted to talk about here and discuss here. The level of propaganda, the level of disinformation, the level of, or just complete silence on this topic, because it shows that they need our compliance. They need our acquiescence. They need our participation or our blindness to get away with the insanity that they're pushing. Because again, it is insanity to support Saudi Arabia, to be a part of a coalition for Saudi Arabia with everything that is happening in Yemen right now. Again, we're talking about millions and millions of people going through the worst hell on earth. 1 million people have contacted cholera in that region. 12 million people are facing famine. And sadly, humanitarian aid, food aid has been weaponized in the region, either by the Houthis or by the Al-Qaeda rebels or by the Saudi Arabian coalition. All of them, whenever humanitarian aid goes in, they, of course, use it as a weapon, use it to support local population and to starve local populations. And this is something that has been created because of a larger idiotic proxy war. And it's totally, totally stupid. And it's important to remind people that this is also something that Donald Trump is fully behind, since Donald Trump also vetoed a bill for the United States to end support for the war in Yemen. We have to understand here, the U.S. House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate actually came together and actually was able to pass a law. That law was to call for the end of U.S. involvement in Yemen. Donald Trump got this law and said, and this bill, and said, no, we're not going to be signing that, at the dismay of many individuals, and still continuing his support of this brutal regime and this endless bloody conflict that has been going on for far, far too long, Jason.
Absolutely far, far too long. And to put this into perspective and not just talk about numbers here for a moment, let's talk about people. I know a lot of you out there are extremely apathetic to things that aren't going on right in front of you. But when we talk about the world's worst humanitarian crisis, we're talking about 3/4 of the population, over 22 million people, think about that need our aid. You know, whether it be food, housing, clothing, or maybe just not to have their neighborhood bombed to hell, okay? This country has little to no idea, Luke. We are even in a military conflict with Yemen. They don't know where Yemen is on a map. They don't understand how we're aligned with Saudi Arabia and even Israel on this matter. They don't understand that we're picking out the targets, that it's our weapons, and that we might as well be at war with Yemen ourselves. Thank God for these Italians that broke it down and said, listen, they're not even loading the weapons on there. Think about that. They're not even loading the weapons, and they're saying, you know what? This is bull. We cannot have blood on our hands. We're not going to put this aid on here and then have a village bombed. And that's what people don't understand. You know, when we talk about military aid and drops, that is often a guise for actual military action. And when drone bombs are taking the lives of children that have nothing to do with this conflict whatsoever, we should be sick to our stomachs. We should be out in the streets. We should be demanding we get out of this conflict. In fact, enough people demanded in this country, even though it's not well known, that both the Congress and the Senate passed us to get out of it. And now it's been vetoed. So you
Yeah.
can't tell me that Trump is the peace president. You can't tell me he's the guy getting us out of the Middle East. You can't tell me he's the guy fighting the deep state when he's balls deep in war with Saudi Arabia. That's it.
Yeah, that's one way of describing it. I agree with you. You know, a lot of people are making excuses for Donald Trump, saying, no, he's going to do this eventually. He's going to end the war in Afghanistan soon enough. He's doing his best. Look what he's doing in Yemen right now. Look at the photos and videos of children starving, of the devastation in that country. This is a sitting president allowing this to happen. There's no morality here. We have to understand that. This man put John Bolton in power for a very specific reason. Many people call it tough negotiations. It's not tough negotiations when people are literally being affected by it right now. But again, this story is huge. It should be everywhere because it shows us how weak, how fragile the war industry is, and how just stupid it is, and how if you're a part of it, if you're loading ships with weapons to go over there, you're a part of the problem. And in Europe, the unions are seeing that and saying, hey, I have a conscience. I can't allow my work to add to addition to the worst humanitarian crisis in this world right now, to the worst suffering. And we look at other cases like Vietnam. There's an extreme learning lesson for the establishment during Vietnam, and that is that the press can affect the public. The public can affect the wars, as it did in Vietnam, where reporters actually did their job. They weren't just embedded and told what to say and not to say by the military-industrial complex, but they were there on the ground with soldiers getting injured, showing the atrocities of war, broadcasting that to the American public, showing you how just unnatural, how idiotic, how stupid it was to go all the way halfway across the world to fight other people on their land for what? For what? What is the whole conflict about? Can someone even tell me in the street randomly what the whole conflict about is in Yemen? I should probably do that. I should probably walk the streets of New York City, do a segment where I just talk to random people and be like, "Hey, why are we fighting in Yemen?" See what people say. Let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in. I'm thinking about doing more on the street kind of coverage myself, but holy God. And I think this is why so many people, Jason, are oblivious to what's happening with American foreign policy. I think that's why there's so much distraction, misdirection, because if we knew what we were doing, if we knew what Donald Trump was doing, if we saw the effects of Lockheed Martin bombs and all these other military-industrial complex weaponry, advanced weaponry that's being made here and shipped over there, if we saw the effects of it, we wouldn't be for it. Because sadly, most of the people affected by war are predominantly innocent people, women, children that didn't deserve to have their life destroyed because of stupid, idiotic policy. That's my take on it. What about yours, Jason?
Yeah, I think if you did that video and you walked up to 50 people, I don't think one could give you a real in-depth answer, and maybe 5 of them would be because of our allegiance to Saudi Arabia, and that would be the limitation of what they knew. That's just a prediction. I think that would be a great idea for a video. What do you guys think in the comments? Should Luke do that video? I think he should, and I think you should be subscribed to News for a Change and WeAreChange, our 2 video channels. We're doing 4 videos a day across. Please, please, please hit that thumbs up button, share this on social media, and get out there and be the change you want to see in the world.